Hi, Derek.
Hey, Danny.
How you doing?
I'm okay. Good to see you.
Oh, and here comes Spiro, just coming in with a purple jacket. A purple jacket, green striped pants.
Ooh, sounds
shirt.
nice.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you see them? Look, okay.
I like that. I like the cap.
You
Hi,
like the
folks.
cap. And what about the glasses? You don't like the glasses. Look, I guess if Joy comes on, she's gonna get on his case about the glasses.
Something or other.
Did you get everything trimmed up, Spiro?
I
Yeah.
got everything trimmed up. I finally got to
Oh,
the
show him your
barber.
hair. Show me your hair.
Well, it's all mad. This guy emailed me last week.
Oh, he did? Yeah, that's
James.
good. We like to speak to him. What is he saying?
Thanks for reading the book.
Yeah, there you go.
Just a little bit of a book.
I should approve of that.
See, she's saying something nice.
You gonna set up over
The
there?
love of my life is saying something nice.
Are you gonna set up
No.
over there?
No. No.
But you are saying something about the glasses.
Come on. They're
What?
librarian glasses.
Yes, but he wears them all the time. Yeah, even driving is like that. So, that's a cool glass.
It's so you can see above and below, right? I get it. Now that I have to wear
But you
glasses, I get
you did
it.
it for effect. I used to give talks like that, where you
Yeah.
can look over your glasses and stuff like that. But not when they're real glasses, or are they reading glasses?
The reading glasses.
Oh, okay. Then that's cool. You want that look then? So you think it's okay?
This
Now
is-
you're sure, because this may last for years.
I get the practicality of it because I find myself, when I play piano, I do this all the time.
Yeah.
And the purple jacket and the green pants and the,
Sleep.
who was running?
They're playing, but they're sold out. I have to get a.
I think he's putting together a look. He hasn't settled on it yet. Just
I
like
think this is
Marty
just
hasn't
what I
settled on a
always-
treatment yet. He
I-
hasn't settled on a
This is
look.
just what I've always worn.
I think if he had a partner for a while next, his look may change.
It might stabilize.
Or maybe around Mary and Brenda and the others, they'll start to
If I have to go to the store and
Give me a
work,
bit.
I'm not gonna wear.
pull a close to wear. It's okay. He may be in the process of creating a couple of yoga, what would you call it? Just yoga feeling in one of the stores.
Latent light.
And maybe classes and stuff like that will come out of it. It's still organically happening. We'll see what takes place.
I'm thinking about latent light.
So he's kind of is creating a look, and he is between lives, is when you say all of these things is true, and yet it's his own yoga, personal yoga. I guess it'll be called personal
Latent
yoga,
light.
because each person then has a little difference in them,
That's true.
so you'll share that. Oh, you'll see how it goes. So that may be in the midst of some sort of thing unfolding, or we'll see where it goes. I just saw a Segway walking fast. In the back there, in the back, going towards something.
Greenhouse.
So what do you say? We are in the midst of a happening where nothing is happening. The world seems to be in flux about what's going to be the news of the month or the week or the day, or what is, and yet every news that seems to happen every week is overwhelmingly moral, test of morality, of existence, and we're in it but not of it. We see the so-called conspiracies and how it's happening. And you still don't understand why, if somebody's supposedly a monster, why you can't just go in there and grab them by the headlock and come on, we just need decent people to run the countries, not this stupid shit. You understand? So
Yeah.
why when something is seemingly so deeply stupid, or that's how it's appearing, meaning having no contact with the human feelings.
Yeah.
But then just going on with your statistics or your logic or whatever, but kind of understanding, okay. And the human feelings is that once you have the feelings, then you see a kind of relationship to it, but you also understand in order to rule and make decisions, they avoid those feelings. So the feelings that they could have for their own kids, they block them, they make the other kids an enemy of that.
Right.
By And so there is a blockage to having those feelings beyond, in other words, one a family may feel for itself that it can't, but as it has to. So the premise for those is that those who care for a larger picture like that have that empathy in it. But then there's also a premise that they have to make decisions that most people wouldn't be able to understand or take. Because when it gets down to ground zero,
Yeah.
it's creepy. It's very
Right.
creepy. How's your feelings about it lately, Derek? As you're watching all this stuff, or hearing about it, or watching it, or accidentally seeing it, or going out of your way to see it.
Yeah.
And here's our main man, Sting's shadow, which is the deepest aspect of the. Can you hear us there, Alfred?
Hold on. Yes.
Let me count the beans. Let me count the grapes. Let me count. What are those anyway? Can you tell what they are, Derek?
Burberry?
Those are cherries.
No.
Hmm?
Cherries, he says.
Oh, cherries. Very nice. Okay. They really, a lot of them. I now I can make them out. Yeah, I couldn't make them out before. Okay, so what's your view of it all, Alfred? Is there a view, a fixed view, or is it just watching flux go by?
He's muted.
Yeah, he's muted. Okay.
Oh, there you go. I'm growing food.
Oh, so growing food kind of connects it to the. Okay, so then, and are you doing anything then, Kai? Well, you're practicing, aren't you? Do you have any practice that you have there?
What do you mean?
I'm
Spiritual
saying
practice?
saying just this during this time of flux, which is a very challenging time when you're in it, and you're of it also. If you're not of it, then you see the last 2 years is literally happening. But if you kind of see the flux of it, you see that almost everything is being reassembled, not caused by anything, but just, so for me, this last 2 years has been like one long day. And at the same time, meaning that time has shifted somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's given more of the premise of the philosophy, which is not a philosophy, but a kind of instinctive perception that you're in it, but you're not of it. And that there are certain things that connect you to the larger picture when that's happening. So it's a natural dialogue, just like 1,000 people can walk down the street and get out of each other's way. And somehow the interaction is all written into the story, unless some issue takes place and then interrupts the so-called status quo. But let's say that you have experiences in your life where you assume an identity. It's almost like, again, like the method acting. You discover personally something that resembles a method acting course, where somehow you disassemble through awareness your history, where it's no longer a driving force, but a creative force, so that you can assume the essence of an identity. What the person is avoiding through remarkable calculations of continuity, the person who is acting that person sees the thread that runs through the story. But somehow in seeing the thread that runs through the story, one is releasing the karmic thread that runs through their own story. And so then you're starting to see your own life or experience your life as a mystery. While it was a history, there was a corresponding mystery. And they say, well, what is that? And they say, hidden behind the facade of the literal, that they were your mothers and fathers, they were this your country and this, hidden behind the facade of the literal, where they were just people doing their thing, who has to assume an identity. And so then you see yourself and you see it, and you see, holy shit, you perceive it as second nature to you now, that a mystery runs through the story. And you're then able to perceive elements of yourself trying to locate this coexisting mystery that you think is in the future. And a coexisting dying or death that is in the future when it's coexisting. To perceive it's coexisting, something transforms in the person where they're no longer literally a survival instrument as a dominant force. But that survival becomes one of the expressions, not the dominant one, creatively. So then you also see from that perspective that your life starts to turn into a creative expression. And you being an artist in that field have a kind of intuitive sense of navigating a world that doesn't literally exist, but exists between friends, between connections and situations. And there is something of an inherent trust in friendship, which is not literalized as friendship or ownership or as a possessive, but it may be a stranger you met on a park bench and talked with. And as you walk past that person every now and then, there's a glance or a glimpse that shares a whole parallel feeling. And your awareness of these parallel feelings, understand that it constitutes a life, that there is, in order to perceive certain dimensions of the life, there needs to be a kind of issue happening where there's a sensitivity, where one re-enters the picture. Because I say why? Because there's some experiences that don't lend themselves to a possessive.
Yeah.
So from those experiences, the self is merely an Uber driver. That's a friend and trusted, but still one becomes aware of another direction happening in their life. And it's not so literalized. You become aware somehow of a parallel. The situations that are literal that you're in are literal only to you. Actually, anyone looking at it sees this remarkably creative act that the person takes for granted. So Alfred can show us 10 million cherries and act like it's normal. And Ursula can do immersive readings to locate the nature of the universe. Okay. And okay, cherries, universe, yoga, Shanti. Who am I? What am I? What the hell's going on here? And I think that would be a nice life to come back to. Where you see that the living is becoming increasingly a creative process. And itself is managing it, is no longer historically driven that way. I feel, and that there are where the normalcy of dying and living enter into the story. And then you see that many of the issues that are coming are not just the literal issues of social constructs, but dying and living is very much an important part of the hidden conversation. And if it's not perceived, then one seeks security in that. But when it's deeply perceived, it doesn't seem to be a threat that way. So somehow there is something between us that prefers a second nature to an intuitive sense of something that's intuitive to the literal world, but not such a foreign thing to an exploratory world. Because the extension of the life is a secondary aspect that medicine is captured and works with and wrestles with and charges you for and creates treatment as but the exploration of what is happening simultaneously takes, we were discussing it this morning, where the cancer is not your enemy at a certain point, but you also see the history of it and how it's navigated through your life. And in that perspective, I think when one has deep perspective and releases what is taught in the literalness of things, I think there's even an agreement that I've had to some extent with the cancer and other things, which may sound Meshuggah about buying another year or how does it look there, but meaning that somehow I've been working with relaxed body, even in doing exercises or anything strenuous, somehow I've relaxed the body, even if I'm lifting a weight or something like that. But that sense of it. And because what did I feel? I felt that there was more an overreading of the immune system that was happening, and an overreaction that was imbalanced, and it needed a relaxed body. Didn't mean relax in terms of athleticism. It meant that there was your relationship to the literal world has an inherent stress factor that runs through it. When I discussed before about money for us being freedom from money, not being more the accumulative, because then that becomes the literalness of it. So somehow money for us is that we found ways to be free.
Mm-hmm.
And where the literalization of free is not such an important factor, but the sense of being free to explore where one is in it, but not of it. One is of it when there is a hey baby call. It could be dopey, we'll call a wink, or say in the crowd, a face in the crowd, and you then see in the crowd something that allows you access. But your relationship to the organized world is that you're navigating through it, you're assuming identities. But the thing is that happens in a relationship, a friendship or love or affection, is that there's a conversation that is missing elsewhere. And when that conversation then is missing again in the relationship, then you can see the creative aspect of it, where it's alive and it's starting to pass away. And it's not the literal conversation, it is one person. There is a hey baby. When there's a hey baby said, there's one person in the feeling shared. And a face in the crowd means that you see something that you wouldn't have looked at, but then you notice something and it allowed you to see something from a different perspective. How does this sound, Urja? Too complicated an issue? Now, how are we?
Right on, right on.
It sounds like it's right alongside us. Just that you could bump your nose against it if you turn to the right.
Yeah.
And somehow you are not only an observer in terms like a fixed posture, but while you are involved, you are an observer. There's an aspect of you that is not organized into the story, but you locate that aspect of you that is not located in the story literally, but is probably the basis of all attractions and reactions. When you lose that feeling that allowed an intimacy to take place, and then the feeling is lost, and the intimacy that was once just normal becomes clunky. You're visiting worlds, you're visiting creative worlds where somehow a feeling took away the rules or made it humorous, the rules of life.
Yeah.
But as the feeling shifts, the rules of life become the determining factor. Okay. Because I say with the feeling there, you discover beyond the rules that the rules are attempts to reflect a humanness, to balance the humanness, the literalness of it. But once you see the humanness of it, the rules are no longer that jarring for you. You're in it, but you're not of it. You see, so the rules aren't as necessary whenever you have an empathetic or human perception. Because the inherently in the perception is the cooperation. And I say, well, what is a cooperation? And I was just reading where in 1972, James Brown went to Rikers Island to sing to the adolescent inmates there.
Mhm.
And I remember once being an adolescent, and they had a big dormitory, and it was for nothing. I think there were most of the people were there because they were using drugs at the time. But he had this concert. They said in '72, was in the Times today, and they said everyone went crazy over the concert. And it was singing about changing your life. He was calling out to them. It was called Bad Heroin, I think. But the question that it awakened in me when I saw it in the paper was this place is one that's unknown to most people. And they have just these Quonset huts, and they're filled with beds and showers. And they have all these beds alongside each other. It seemed to me maybe 150 beds in there or more. And
Wow.
then there are supervisors sitting in, or cops sitting at tables watching you and whatever is going on. And there's always something happening, some fighting, card games, this or that. But it's always restless. But then it must have been even much worse. And then what I was reading last week was that they're attempting to close it down because it's so bad that most guards don't come in any longer, and the population is ruled by gangs there. And I, when you look at almost everything, when you look at Afghanistan, you look at Ukraine, you just see a kind of hurt running through the story, just a
Oh, yeah. Big one.
as if there was somehow God failed you, that somehow, what do you say? And as you watch the hurt running through the story, where it's not literal, and people try to explain it, and they try to explain away why they can be violent and why they can be this, and at the same time, you see, once it's put in motion, that the object put in motion tends to stay in motion. And then they're figuring out ways how to interrupt the motion. And one is left to witness this event that seems to be historically driven because the elements are always there. So you don't see it to be an event that just happened one day. You see that it has been happening over time. And that it's happening over time. You then walk into the conspiracy theories that run through the story, where they're very real to the people who live in them. The chess games that they're playing with each other and with humanity are very real to them. So the others are left to figure out the conspiracy of it, while the others are in it normally, where they're seeing the world from that place. Where Putin could look at the world as a chessboard of perspective.
Yeah.
And could move this piece against that piece and what will happen there and how to figure that. And understand all the nuances. And yet when you walk into a room of them, you just meet a room full of schmucks again. They're not big deals. You know what I mean? When you walk into the room, they won't be able to take a person walking into the room because a person will see something so cheesy that they'll become ashamed of themselves. Without anything, seeing that there is a moment of seeing a kind of cheesiness around life. That kind of consumes it into that you desire to own this or want that, that you can then sacrifice this or that towards it, of human beings, whatever. So then you enter into a world of normalcy for them. But then you also meet characters that you've met before, that are creeps that you've met in movies or you've met before, that are no big deal. They're big deals in their fame, they're big deals in their shtick. And then they say, well, who would I meet? And I say, if I meet Biden, I meet an old guy who's probably needs to pee while he's talking and shit like that. You understand? I'm imagining myself in it, that he has to pee bad and he has to talk about this and the big things, and he can't just say, look, I'll catch you back in 5 minutes. Okay, he's not allowed to do that. So then I'm just saying that he personally may be dealing with a lot of things as he comes into a situation. You see a deeper thing, a thread running through the story. And what you see is, on one level, peoplehood. But then you see all the relationships that are going into what looks like a singular act or one person talking. And you see a whole creative structure going down. And we step into, just by being, we step into a world at war, a world in conflict, a structure going on that seems to enable it, and yet makes us strangers in the world, because when we see it, we're not in it anymore. When we see it, we discover that we've had a parallel world and a parallel life to this stuff all along. And so when we see it, there's an effect on us, not so much the doer. The Puck said the other day, you know, Puck, Midsummer's Night Dream, he says, what fools these mortals be. We got an old movie from 1930
Oh,
with Mickey Rooney as Puck. I had never even heard of that movie before, Midsummer's Night Dream. But the beginning phases were so beautiful. These white young creatures, like with white shawls over them, hundreds of them, just navigating through the woods. It was really impressive. It was almost a silent movie. It was, but they just had, and then the Mickey Rooney as Puck, he looked like a 12-year-old kid, but he was really so impressive.
wow.
But it was a crazy movie, but just goofy enough to see how they used the camera in those days. I think it was 1932 or so. I wonder if that's available. But I showed it to, I still have it here. I took a copy of it, so I had it here. They played, but it was just, you run into things that are parallel. We're running into things that are also at the same time that it's also occurring again. This stuff every damn 2 weeks. There's another heartbreaker in some way if you look at it. Because I say why? Because it's taking a heartbreaker is not because you're buying into any program or whatever. But you understand a flux is taking place. And in that, the human is in it, but not of it. The human, so then one sees, one comes into the place for the experience. In friendship, something shifts. For me, the molecular nature shifts in friendship, that there is a surrender of forces that would usually survive that share. In the friendship, one discovers a world that when it's lost, there is usually a broken heart. That's why the loss of a love affair, the loss of this, it seems like it's psychological, it seems like this, but it seems almost purely created. That when the being loses this in some way, just as if you had some profound illness and when you lose it, you are sent to a place that is hidden. That the loss of a deep love, especially if it's genuine, can send you close to what looks like death to you, but is actually a view of the other side of the mirror looking into the story from a different place. Where you see what we call death, is a view of the life from a different place. Where there's no longer a continuum, but it's seen from a different place. When you have it experienced so deeply that it brings you to a place before you were born, you actually see the environment and the situation days before you took the body, months before, you see a situation, you start to see you come more from a mystery than a history. And then as it literalizes, as you take form, you see that form literalizes into a continuum. So then you have in a background, you're Irish, you're Italian, you're a woman, you're a boy, You assume all these identities that start to govern the expression. But there's a thread that runs through the story that was there before it took shape and form. Some will call it hormones and past things that you've inherited from family, but in fact, what you've inherited is the mystery into the history.
Mm.
So it literalizes into a similarity. But when it's perceived, it changes the karmic time of repeating into a dharmic time, where you see that life is it's more of a movie than it is literal. And it had its passages, it's had its times. And the different phases of your life resemble almost different movie scripts or different movies of your life, where you see somehow the subtle differences in identity. At the same time, the life continued to be who you are. You see the different phases of your life have been a journey. When it's perceived as a journey, without shtick, but perceived as a journey, at the same time, you understand the literalness of being born on a certain day and being this old and having Social Security or whatever you're doing. But at the same time, you're able to see the literalness and the evocative simultaneously. Then you see why you've been taking things to reach that place or to next, because that place must come from a certain state. You can get a glimpse of it and it'll help you creatively or it'll help you structurally, but it ain't around that. The deeper you go with it, the less hold you have on it creatively. And it reveals dimensions that are inherently there, coexisting in the life with you. And you see that the attempts to reach it are also based on attempts to be in a certain state of grace, to invite it. So you realize the dialogue, but you also realize that it is parallel and that there are elements in your life that are available to you from a certain place, when you're in a certain place yourself. Just we'll say, if you're making music there, or you have to teach music, or you're making the music yourself, you kind of put yourself in a place. You may not be able to, there may be things pressuring you, but you also understand that there's something special about it when it touches you, where somehow the issues that you're carrying, where the real issue has been the creative one. And the creative one allowed you then to put in place these other things. And you understand that inherently money in the society has fear, pressure, greed, all those elements attached to it. And for us, money represents a kind of creative freedom, where we allow it, where we're in it, because I say why? Because we're not of the momentum that dictates how life should be lived. In it, but not of it, means that somehow there is a freedom of exploration. And that freedom runs through the story, and it becomes something of a protective. Because it's not a freedom that means a harm, and it's not a freedom, but it's also a freedom that will not take shit or be squelched or imprisoned. Its freedom is in relationship, that it releases the energy. Being held by the money as a part of identity represses the creative energy as to being naive. That's why you have to go into a creative life where that way of thinking would be naive in the literal world, but is important in the creative life that you kind of think from a naive place where it's not such a money maker, a schemer, a scammer. And they say, why? Because the audience can see you.
Mhm.
And when you go on stage and you kiss, it's even more than kissing your wife or your husband, because you see the audience is watching. You put your heart in the creative act. And so you're able to see, even in the dark, the audience's views, its ups and downs, its cheers, but you are having a dialogue. That audience did represent a dialogue with the mystery. And as you had a dialogue with the mystery creatively, it became second nature to you now. And then there may be things that you would try or take in order to increase the sense of it. Very much, as I mentioned before, taking a cup of coffee before going to work or doing something. You started to understand your relationship to some of these potions and how to navigate with them. So once you understood it to that degree, the addictive sense was no longer such a dominant force. Meaning that the seller of the stuff had a motive, in one sense, of a continuity. Just like the medical of a continuity, for us it becomes a creative act. This exploration of the everyday life and finding out that the many dimensions hidden in every situation. And then once you start to perceive that, you start to perceive a dialogue of invitation inherent in it, just like if you read about a certain movie you'd like to see. There's a kind of invitation in the writing about it or what you see creatively. You start to see that you have relationships like that that have invitation around an interest of sharing or interacting. I feel this is what's happening now. So when someone or friends of ours who then have what would normally be called a major illness out in the world, and they're relating to it, there's a shared experience conversationally and structurally. There's not so much what to do, but it's deeply where to be in something, and that the doing comes out of that experience of being. Because then you understand in the marketplace, it's not so, the continuity of life, unless one creatively desires so and then tries the experiment. But it's not an automatic. It's an agreement. And I would say that this happened for me at times with if a doctor at a certain time would have said, please, Danny, do this, I respect for him and affection for him. I would have allowed him to introduce me into his world, which is not a world I would have gone into him. But if that feeling was there, to me, that feeling, that human feeling shared, is like a friend leading you into a space where they won't, or like a parent taking care of you where they won't lie to you about the situation or whatever. There's a feeling shared where there is not such a strenuousness to live. There is a friendship that you share, and that's the feeling you'd like. So somehow you're navigating a situation where it's not so much literally choice, but I do feel if one does give up, then the elements start to give up with them. So I do feel that for some of us, it's literally an immersive happening. Now, all of us, an immersive is happening, and all of us are subject to a living and dying process simultaneously. But in our case, it's accentuated in a way because it's only an inch away at any given time. So when I'm saying we make dopey agreements that we'll buy another year creatively, and we're not so attached to time as a literal device, we're kind of seeing the time as more of a creative device. I'd like to have an honest conversation with my relatives one day. Okay. I say, okay, that'll take you probably 6 months to have a heartfelt. And they say, other than that, how would you have a heartfelt conversation with relatives? And they say, if you pass away in a correct way, in your absence, you'll have a really deep conversation with the relatives that you could have never had while you were in the body. And I say, well, because the history is blocking the mystery. So then it's literal. The memory is literal. But when it's released from the literal, it's the evocative memory, not your possessive any longer. So there's not that much separation. When you remember a lover, when you remember an issue, yourself is not in the way of it any longer. So there's no right or wrong for you any longer. You see the moves. And you see that when an affectionate relationship shifts to a survival one, when a cooperative becomes competitive, it starts to lose contact with certain threads that run through the story. Because that feeling was an imperative for them to do this Meshuggah thing together. So as it literalizes into survival, it starts to undermine its own survival by shifting the relationship to memory, where it had more beauty in it. The memory of it may have had more beauty of it than the people could have managed themselves, because they're in the story. I'm saying this not because I'm seeing certain things happening to me now or about to happen, where there's a beauty running through it, and then there's the memories selective of the self. So when an energy parts and then elements start to recreate it, where it's still, for you it's the past, but in life it's actually parallel. So there's a moment waiting that's kind of based on being naive. Not calculating, not smart, not philosophical, but that somehow no trip. So you realize to some extent what no trip means, that somehow if the continuity was there, it doesn't, but if in fact there is a moment, and that's why dying is so profound, because it releases the story from its history to the mystery. That the history could never have gotten to that moment because it was literalizing it. And then there's a moment when something happens that there's a hey baby that releases the story from the possessive. And you see that you've shared this experience. And it releases the story from the possessive, which has an inherent survival to it. So in that moment, let's see, I think these events are always happening to us in one way or another. And I don't know that there's a how-to as much as there's a recognition of, of coming to somehow a mutual state. As if the roles that you've played through that time, now that you're on the couch, those were roles you've played. Yeah, now you're discussing this new movie that you're in. And you see the role, so somehow, we're not talking about just so that you have a happier life or a different life, but you see the next life takes place. Usually only if you passed away, they'll say, I'm sorry, mommy, or this or that. There'll be a moment that will relax the story.
Yeah.
And you see that they were a person. They existed in a similar way that you did. To perceive that is to see something extremely hidden in plain sight. Because it would interrupt the continuum that's normal in our world to a shared experience. So in that perception, there's a shared experience. If in fact, while it's still in the body, there is a shared experience voluntarily, then you kind of meet the story beyond the story. And so then you start to see that there is a world that is not structured as a continuum, that is not structured according to age and structure and past and situations and education, but that there's a parallel world that has a creative dimension, that if you visit it, because something has shifted in you, it's not a possessive, and you see that there has been a parallel life all along. And I discovered even that I was born with a cancer that goes back quite a few time period to people, and that it was a normal thing that, okay, but then you discover it. And when you discover it, you discover a process going down where the cancer was a main thing in seeing something that couldn't have happened. It was the main thing because we were already committed to looking at something, and looking at something, you met your father, you met his father, you met a story, but you also met them as beings that you didn't know that they had a life. Of course, you knew they had a life if you grew with them or lived with them, but you understand that everyone in the structure had their own life hidden from each other. And that some friends would know some things that you could never find out. And when you did find out by accident, they would throw you for a loop. That a neighborhood of people, that friends knew everything about what was happening. They saw your father as, again, a friend who happened to be a father. You saw your father who happened to have friends.
Mm.
So the literalness of it, each person, but when the one who had the father who's literal then discovers another dimension of the person and discovers the parents before they were born, not as their history, where they came from or whatever, but meets them as if they were people living together. And you see that, of course, there's an of course moment running through the story. You see, you come from a mystery of accidents, of people meeting each other accidentally, this happening, that happening, that couldn't be predicted or organized or whatever. You see the mystery in the history. There is a need again for organized world to have history as the meaningful thing that happened. But then you see that the mystery is the real thing that happened. While it was going on, as while it's going on for us now, anyone could have predicted and shouted out to them what was going to happen to them when the Nazis were coming and this was starting to happen, now we know. And yet, when you see, how the hell did they not know while it was happening? And they say, well, how do we not know while it's happening? How do we not know something that they didn't know? They went on with their lives. And then all of a sudden the world exploded and people found themselves, and if they had to pretend that they were German or Russian, they had to find and sing songs for it and do all this shit. Okay. And that they were being organized into a way of thinking and seeing and acting. But the organization was a way of squelching the human element as being dumb. Squelching your desire not to be a person who hurts another or kill or something into being a dumb thing. But at the same time, you discover it was not a dumb thing. That there are certain elements that are pressuring your humanity, not only the psychic aspect, but the psychic aspect is a protector of some soulful feeling. You become aware that you are caring for the life that you're living. It's not spelled out, but now a primary thing is not only literal the survival, but it's not survival at the expense of the depth of it, at the creativity of it, of the grace of it. So then there is an agreement between friends and lovers that survival is not the dominant factor, but that it becomes a medium itself. So then I say, that's my feeling around that the money that is organized in the social fabric to create fear and dynamic and hope and trust and desire and all that, that the money for us is in fact a creative expression, allows us a creative expression of a kind of freedom. When it becomes, again, its own addiction, it's like sometimes the drugs that they gave you for pain, as long as it frees you from the pain so that you can be normal for the moment. But when the drugs start to define you and you see that they were planning for you to be addicted and need it, and so then they increase the same pressure that they were hoping to relieve with the pain where you needed it.
Yeah.
Where your body needed it. And I say, what we need is to be free. And that's a recognition that it is free already. It is not something that you have to do to make it free. It is a perception that inherently in the being is a free movement energy. And the perception of that starts to give one a relationship to it, where the everyday still carries on, but somehow it's no longer defined by the literalness of the everyday, that the life itself resembles more of a creative act. And you see that you may assume identities from, but coming from a similar place in yourself. And that friendship becomes the medium. Okay, Urja,
Hmm.
you doing well there?
Yeah, it has been pretty magical and serendipity, and I'm very grateful. And
Yeah, it sounds nice.
we took Clara to the airport this morning.
Oh, so where did she go?
She went to Portland.
Okay, is she coming back there or going?
I think there's going to be maybe a back and forth. We'll see. But she did a lot of work with movement, and and it's amazing what it's doing to Stephen.
Oh, did she teach him how to move a bit?
Yeah, and he said this is the first time I allow myself. Everybody else has given up on me, he said, but he really was really amazed also.
You
So
could
it
tell him.
was-
You could tell him to give me a call if he likes.
Yes, yes.
It does also sound like the few folks I'm talking to also that everyone, some people have come to a challenging place. So I think that you, with your daughter, revealed that happening where before it was normal.
Yes.
And everyone took a normal stance to it. But then you came in and said, come on, can't you see how deep there's a loneliness that runs through the story? Come on, you guys. Okay. So then you say, well, I say, then you see loneliness as a tool of the psyche.
Yeah.
You see, that's the symptom of an aloneness. The philosophy that he's in is an aloneness. So it's not so much that you can do something about things.
Right.
But no, I remember him as a young man, very young man, maybe 23 or something like that, 20. That we started from this weird world of ours. That must be 50 years ago. So it's been a weird and
I'm sure.
interesting experience. What do you think?
I think I see, it's like all the people who know someone, and you meet it, the weaving of all of us.
It is. It's interesting to see.
remarkable.
And the perception of it makes it kind of sacred.
Yes, extremely.
And yet, you also say there's a kind of avoidance of that perception at the same time, because it takes away the ownership to some degree.
Completely.
Well, when you see that you're in a movie, then it takes away the ownership. You're then looking for the creative expression. That's
Yes.
right. So somehow, when it's a creative process, you're free then to try different expressions that are more appropriate. But somehow in the literal life, you're not. But somehow in the creative life, when in fact it is coming your way to create, where the life itself is creative, not that you have a part that is creative, but that the life itself is creative, you're then you assume different identities and expressions for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just as you would in the film or the play, you would say, okay, act like a tough person for 5 minutes in order to have an effect on the situation, because it's being run away with by tough people or something. So you have to act yourself. They say, yes. They say, why? You only have the ability to do it in order to nullify the violence that's happening.
Yeah.
So you can assume an identity for the amount of time necessary to offset the violence that's happening. And they said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, creatively, when attitude comes into the story, and the need was to be able to mutually perceive something, you understood if something terrible happened, the people who had very different attitudes would have a momentary feeling of shared. And they would forget their attitudes or whatever towards a shared feeling. That shared feeling allows a creative act to take place. mutually. Whereas the opposite in the viewpoints won't allow that energy to fully share. If something happens where the people are forced to drop the attitude in relationship to what is, they call in sacred terms what is, where you mutually see what is. When you mutually see what is, you become one life. In many bodies, but one life. The mutual perception becomes one life to some degree. If that's dominated by the psyche, then it becomes usually organized into a literalness. If in fact it is perceived deeply, there is something beyond the literal where there is an affectionate connection that's stronger than the joining up and the signing up and all these other things. When there's a mutual perception, and I say, what would that be? And I say, it's very much like a young child and a mother. They would have a mutual perception that's stronger than anything else you would try to lay on the situation. See, so then I say that there are many forces that are operating in the everyday. When they're illuminated as a way of life, the everyday becomes its creative act. Then situations that come your way are more creative than they are literally doing something about it. You see that the avoidance of seeing runs through the story. And so then you see this whole premise of avoiding seeing, but seeing as a future event, that you're going to do this or that. But so we step into a grid, and we see that that's normal within everyone's existence. At the same time that we're supposedly told that all this stuff is going on out there, our daily life is carrying on. And we see trickle-down experiences that are coming from supposedly a larger picture out there, but still, the daily life is carrying on, our life is carrying on. Somehow we're in it, but we're not of it. Somehow there's a historical imperative of repetition that's happening before our eyes. But somehow our observation of it is keeping a human dimension. The doing something about it is forcing you to join its continuity. The observation of it, our premise is that the observation of it changes it cold, and because once, just as if you were doing something horrible and there was a camera that you ran into out there, you would then start acting like a normal human being. You see, it's inherent. The person will act like a normal human being if it's observed in a certain way. Now that was if God observed it, it would feel ashamed. But then you saw that ashamed was not ashamed. Ashamed was seeing something, not shaming.
Right.
But in retrospect, you see the life, how absent one was in their own existence. And there's a feeling, not shaming in the world, but you see a moment where you miss the moment. Okay, so you see that somehow the life avoided a heartfelt conversation. Not that it could have a heartfelt conversation, but I'm talking about it was built to avoid that very thing. And so it discovers it in time, in retrospect. But you also see that it would look to the psyche like an impossible conversation for everyone to sit down and say, look, kids, this is what's happening for us, and we were wondering how you were. I'm not even talking about a psychological conversation, just as if it was normal. Not possible, but it's inherent in the form. And it's inherent in the form in trust. And somehow something happens when there is trust there. And something is lost as the trust diminishes or shifts. and the situation literalizes. And then when it literalizes, it's no longer our experiment in the same way. It's no longer our movie that we're sharing together, the ups and downs of it. But it then singularizes into individuals who have very different lives going. The perception brings it together. To some extent, the perception is avoided because it takes away one's ownership of the life and sees that there's a deeper sentiment happening, that the self is caring for the body and caring for the being, doesn't own it. It's caring for an experience that's written into the story. Okay, shall we call it a day? Was anyone else on there, kind that I didn't notice?
Let's see, Sophia, and I do not know how to pronounce this name, but Suleman. Do you know how to pronounce that?
It's Suleman?
Suleiman?
Well, I didn't get the, well, it's okay.
And Jimmy.
Oh, Suleiman.
Suleiman.
I was on.
Who is that, Erja?
Suleiman? No?
Yeah,
Suleiman. Yeah, that's nice. He comments on my channel a lot, so it's nice to know how to
Okay.
pronounce his name. And Jimmy and Carrie.
okay, I see Carrie there now.
Yeah.
How are you, Carrie, okay?
Yeah, Denny.
Yeah, well, let's hang on for another week.
Yeah,
See what comes up next here.
right.
Did you like that movie, Drive My Car, Spiro?
Yeah.
So there's a movie called Drive My Car.
I
All
want
right.
to-
Yeah. That
Check it
Spiro
out.
liked a lot. Yeah, it's out there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on the major streaming.
Reminds me of that song. There's a
What's that?
song.
It is, but
It's not that. It's not that. No, so it's been okay. Look, here's Mary with a baseball hat.
Hello, Mary. Hello.
So we've been okay. I hope that you've all been okay also. And Alfred, how you doing? Oh, his voice is off, right?
The cherry man.
The cherry man. Well, he seems okay then.
Are those his cherries?
Yeah, he grows out there.
Wow.
That's nice.
He's our shaman. He's called the bad shaman. And he's been I just saw a picture of him on there's a show on Vice TV. And they showed you how then there's one guy that travels the world and he tries different things all over the world. And I think there was a mention of
Hamilton Morris's Pharmacopoeia, I think it's called.
yeah, Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia. Yeah. So Alfred has been there a long time, maybe 1,000 years by now.
I was this tall.
But the cherries may come from New Jersey. They look like Jersey cherries.
Michael Bravo just made a comment. He said,
what's that?
songwriters are lucky because the very craft of songwriting is psychotherapy, magic, talking to, listening to God, creativity, purging, exorcism, rebirth, etc. But it's funny because I was having a rough night the other night and I did exactly that. I wrote a song and I felt so much better after I did it.
Well, that's why I'm saying that what I discovered a couple of weeks ago is that little article about sleep that we all knew already, but it kind of released it from this idea that an 8-hour sleep was natural. And you see that an 8-hour sleep was an acquired phenomenon around a segment of the world okay. But then you would also find yourself, if you got up at 3 or 4 in the morning trying to sleep or fighting with this or once you kind of understood that sleep was a kind of creative act of yours, and that segmented sleep has been the norm. If you were a farmer, if you were in a farm, if you were a mother nursing children, or that basically you would have to get up And then if you're a geezer, you're getting up to pee quite a few times or whatever. So you understand that what you're calling interrupted is in fact a natural thing that is happening. And that, but the one thing that allowed me when, when you get up and then you're lying there, it was a stressful thing because you were figuring out ways to go back to sleep. For me, that released the story where lying there was itself a state. And so now I've been again exploring this lucid dreaming state again that I had explored last year again, but it's then come to me where while I'm in there in the middle of the night, there was another form of sleep that came. And where, it's not so much based on memory, but it was based on more being there. You were sleeping and up simultaneously in some way. And so then there was a kind of discovery of something else. Once it was released from the idea that you needed to do this and you needed to do that, and then when you weren't doing that, the self-pressure that would come. Even though we've always been exploring sleep more as a creative process, that perception kind of allowed you to individualize your experience a bit more. Like telling you, my period is, I go from, we'll say, 6 to 10. 6 in the evening is my last meal. And then at 10 o'clock or a little after will be my starting of eating then. And so that phase there between 10 and 6 is more of an active principle. But there is sort of a process that looks like fasting. It has fasting in it, but you're not so conscious of your fasting once it becomes normal for you, where it's just the body processing itself. And so in seeing the body processing itself, you're starting to become aware of a miracle in your own existence. And as you become aware of it, you care for it in a different way. And it's not just buying the construct of living as long as you can or whatever, but that may be a byproduct of living as deeply as you can. So length may be a byproduct of depth, but if length is at the sacrifice of depth, it's not a, okay. So let's say one is caring for the life they're living.
Yes.
And then what are called the naive sciences about living are not so naive. You see that there have been intuitive senses, there's so many things, but then they didn't come from the same construct. And you saw that the medical profession then took on a motive of make a buck in such a way that unless you became friendly with many of the doctors that you were there, where the friendliness allowed you no trip. But you understood that in the medical profession, the undercurrent of money and how organized it is around continuity of treatment. Yes, we are leery when we enter into that world. There may be specifics that we may try, but we also understand that it has an underlying premise of continuity or money making. And that somehow, as long as you represent money making to a construct, you exist. And if you're not a money making number, then they say, they don't know how to treat you any longer anyway. So let's say you're stepping into varying phases of your existence in the literal world. And to some extent, in some cases, you're finding yourself irrelevant to the larger world. In fact, you may pass away for a month before they knock on the door and see how you're doing. So let's say, talk about irrelevance. If they come a year later and knock on the door, that would be really irrelevant. So let's say we're not so organized into the literal world and that longer. We're kind of really in it. We're literally in it, but not of it. And we are exploring the life as it is. And in exploring a life as it is, time shifts in that. And look at the last 2.5 years, it's just kind of like that. The time shifts like that and it's normalized. And yet so much happened and nothing happened. And if you turn on the news or look at it, so much is going on and yet nothing seems to be happening simultaneously. And if I go out, went to Sam's Club, I have to make believe, yeah, how you doing? Like, like that, depending on who I run into, in a situation. But it seems pretty weird. What you would call normal is pretty weird to me. Even going to Sam's Club and then going to get gas was pretty weird phenomena. And yet it's normal. To get gasoline, they have they had about 200 cars there getting gas. At 4
Where?
pumps.
Why?
Because
They were just backed up so far with getting gasoline, And I think it was $4.31 or something like that for yeah. So it did seem like we're in a place in flux. It's going up and down. How are you over there, Kai? Are you managing?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I'm just, I'm playing music. That's my new thing. That's how I'm managing, to be honest.
Yeah,
It's
no, that's good. That's good.
keeping me going.
That's why with that article today about James Brown playing in Rikers Island there was very interesting. How everyone was brought together in the place by his music.
Yes.
How they all just went crazy over it. So what do you think, Derek? Any news at all?
It seems like time is just zipping by,
Yeah.
and the things that people focus on, it seems, I don't know, almost irrelevant in the face of that. Like the war and all of it. It seems. I mean, there's so much time to play with. It seems ridiculous otherwise.
Yes, but life is going on for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting life.
And Joan is okay with everything that's going to happen?
Yeah. We're experimenting with diet stuff because she feels like she has an autoimmune thing.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting.
Alfred's done a lot of work with that.
So there's the guy with the cherries there has done a lot of work with that.
Diet?
No, LDN, low dose naltrexone. Low dose
Did you hear that?
naltrexone.
Can you elaborate?
Yeah, it's an anti-inflammatory off-label. It really works great, and inflammation is about gut health. So probiotics, prebiotics, and it's a thing.
But one fellow I read again, and my concern always was this: the fellow said that the concern they felt with that is also in the inflammation, where the body was more resembles a lupus, but it's not lupus. But basically, the concern was what would happen to Tom, that sepsis, that somehow there's an inflammation running through the body that then becomes sepsis. So then I was looking at certain things, discussing that with someone in Europe who's having a bladder cancer and other stuff like that. But then the underlying condition was more an infection in the body, a small infection in the body that the immune system was overreading and overreacting to it. It was creating its own fight against itself. So so actually I played around with the RSO oil concept because of the premise that cancer relaxed body, and it was the female plant, and it was the sattva. What was it? Which plant was it? The indica. It had to be the indica, meaning that it was mellow. You didn't feel it so much as that the body relaxed. So I used a naive sense of the kind of relaxation, but I did feel that the biggest challenge I saw was a kind of traveling infection in the body, or inflammation running through it.
Is it Hashimoto's or not? That's the question.
No, but Urja knows about Hashimoto. Urja is in Hashimoto.
one of the symptoms of the thyroid, but that's not what I have.
No.
But I've heard about it.
No, that the condition would be the low thyroid would have a circadian rhythm challenge. And so it's really interesting. It's a whole remarkable scientific experiment. But I feel what he's suggesting may be interesting for, what do you think, for Joan there?
Yeah, I'll bring it up to her. See
Did you
what-
get it down?
I didn't, but it's on the YouTube, so I can always replay it and see what it was.
Okay, thanks a lot there. What do you think? Thank,
LDN.
LDN.
Mhm.
You heard of it, Ursha?
What that? Multi?
LDN.
It's like a low dose naltrexone. Is that what?
Yeah.
I haven't heard, no.
Okay.
It works great.
And what do you think then, Alfred?
I think Kai needs to
How
check
about
your
salt
thyroid,
beer?
TSH, and TPO. Kai, just do that, please.
What did you say?
Check your TSH and TPO. You look
What is
like
that?
those are thyroid tests. They're easy, but you look like you have a thyroid issue to me.
Oh, I had it tested last April. It was fine.
Yeah. Well, no, the issues are
I
coming
can
and
get
going.
tested
though.
again. What shows that I have a thyroid issue?
Looking at your throat, the left side of your throat is swollen, the other side, the right side, and
This
your
one?
eyebrows are thinning. That looks like thyroid issues, hypothyroid.
My eyebrows are thinning?
Yeah.
They
I
are?
mean,
New.
I've diagnosed this with 10 people, and I just want to make sure you're healthy. That's my only concern.
Okay,
I mean,
I'll get my thyroid
okay.
checked.
Let me see your picture there, my man. Because I'm going to give you a little, let me look up your nostrils for a moment. Let me see your picture there for a minute. You're not going to show me your picture, just cherries. Hello, Alfred.
Yeah, I do the Sting thing for other YouTube or Zoom meetings.
Yeah, but you're showing me cherries, bro.
He wants to see your face.
Let me see. Yeah. Let's see. I will, but you know,
Look, what I'm saying is that basically we then come to a place between us all, since we've all lived a life in this kind of really our own weird magical space of similarities that we've all had. But at the same time, as you find a cancer doctor who's treating cancer patients, gets the similar cancer himself, I would say, Alfred, that when I always was talking to you, I was always seeing this immune challenge. What do you think? So that you became expert on it. But how are you doing with it? How's your health?
I learned about it. I reacted to it, and I'm much better.
Yeah.
It
So
almost
that's what I'm
killed me.
saying. How's your health going? Because basically your insight, most of our insights come from having had the experience.
I feel like I'm 16 years old.
16 years old. You
Yeah,
better
I
show
do.
us your picture then. So if we agree with you.
I'll do the picture thing, but it's like, you know.
That's okay. No, I'm happy to hear that.
And
Well,
you know, Danny, I miss you. Mary, Spiro, I love the
I-
whole family. And
Spiro
I'm there
might be
for
up
you.
there.
Yes, Spiro's coming on Friday.
Spiro's coming on Friday. But if in fact you, all of you would like, all y'all would like to come down. Hmm? Or because why? I say because Ursula, you feel like leaving the body together? We'll just fly out of this joint. We'll talk to Alfred from flying overhead. We'll visit Taos every now and then, see how things are going. But it's getting weirder and weirder, isn't it?
Mm.
So can one have a relationship to the living and dying process as if like it's informing you? You can say, you know, I'm not into it any longer because we have, we'll say, Ursula and I have this kind of Michigan idea that we can buy a year or two, and it's not literal time that way. It's more creative time. We'll see how it unfolds or where it's at or whatever. So somehow we're bringing a Michigan, a creative element into the literal world. where it's not always the literal world that defines us. It's not always the news that is telling us what is happening. The news is telling us some aspect of what is going on there, but certainly there's in so many dimensions to existence and living or whatever. So if your life is in that exploration, then you're starting to see all the currents that affect it. And when you see the currents that affect it, it kind of naturalizes the human condition to almost a natural condition of wind, breeze, hurricanes. You start to see it's all a creative process that you're engaged in perceptively. And survival is only an aspect of it, but in the form, it's the navigating principle, but in the life, it's not. It's a tool, but not at the dominance of the grace. So I feel that Alfred's life has been a lifetime in trying to explore the grace, not impose the grace, not to give it a name and not to give it a look or fix it up, but to actually authentically discover something that transforms the picture in its discovery. Not an attempt to capture it, make it nice, sell products, which are all the capturings of being able to see. It satisfies your pressure. But when one is related to the energy, then one sees the ability to be still enough to see into the story where you meet the essence of the thing. I think that you've attempted to help people who are literally, but generally people make it into help so they can go back into the literal world. But those of us whose life is exploration, where we assume identities but are not governed by identities, then there's an inherent exploration already, and we then may try these things in order from a conscious place. Conscious meaning that it's, as I mentioned in the dumbest way, it's like you're having a cup of coffee because you want to be a bit energized, you're about to do something. So you are managing already, even in the diets, even in your circumstance, you are managing an alchemical process already. As I mentioned before, when you discover about sleep and you see it has been organized into an 8-hour concept, when in fact it is a creative process itself. Then you start to, it releases the story from, there's this kind of self-punishment in trying to sleep longer or whatever that would naturally occur. And they say there's 10,000 products to help you do that very thing as if it's normal. But then you discover something that the normalization of sleeping for a period and maybe waking up and then returning to sleep, you see somehow that the life becomes yours to work with. And since you don't have a literal job and a literal life in an organized way that way, but you assume it when you go out the door, then you see that you are choosing your own foods, you are choosing your patterns and so on like that. The only thing is it becomes illuminated. And in it being illuminated, it's sort of second nature to you now to choose what's healthy for you, to be with something you would like, to even watch a show that speaks to you. So you see, in fact, one is inherently immersed in a process already. And one of the aspects of the process is a literal life. But the literal life, at this point in time, at the expense of a creative life, is no longer. Now you see that that is being interrupted even to a larger population, even in countries like Ukraine or Syria. They're just, normal people are being disrupted in a way. And it's much like a body being disrupted in a way. And it's okay. And yet the disruption supposedly is changing the molecular nature of the constructs of what people believed in and how you were supposed to act and what we were. It does seem flux or up in the airness is an appreciated sense of what is happening. And the attempt to literalize it seems to bring on reaction. So in meeting each other, And I feel that that should be pretty good, that maybe you can try. What do you feel about the eyebrow situation? That was news to you, Kai?
Yeah, I didn't know my eyebrows were thinning, but it's funny because Michael Bravo also said, he said, you're just feeling a little stuck creatively, Kai. It's not your thyroid. It's just very slight emotional stuckness, not physical. He said, I looked at your right eye also. Do I look off? I didn't notice. Do I look
You
off?
look beautiful.
Well, I mean, is there a sense of that? Because I mean, I do have like I do have a lot of tension in my right side, but that I've had for years, and it's like something I'm trying to release, but I don't know.
Hello.
They seem to be seeing
Hi.
something, so.
Hi. Hi. And Michael. And that's a very cool lady. If you've been through certain of her experiences, so stop it with that. Let me see. Although it may be helpful as friends, but no running commentary, man. Let's be there. If in fact you're going to interact, you're going to say to Kai Shanti, you're going to tell her what's really happening for her, and don't worry, baby. Okay. And then, so let's say all of us are shamans in this circumstance, but all of us are people also hanging with each other. It's a creative space for me. But in diagnosis, let me say to you, I think Kai is very cool. And I think that to know her, if you would meet her or to know her, to see her, you would be deeply touched.
Yes.
She's laid out a little bit with your viewpoints. And you see that you're speaking to someone, okay? But within our context, just so it's not wrong or right, but without a context. I have a doctor friend that peddles out here that treats cancers and stuff like that, but he's a regular guy, may hang out here, okay? We are immersed in that. The parallel worlds, we're immersed in that. The world that you would try to visit is also the world that you've been avoiding, the world that you've tried to find in one sense. And when you look at it, you see that continuity has still dominated one's existence. So at the same time, one has been exploring, one has also been ensuring to become aware of one's own experience, not by one's viewpoint of it, but when you lose it in retrospect and you see your own life in perspective, you see it wasn't your life. It was a life being lived that you were caring for. The perception of that you were caring for it makes one ashamed of themselves in the perception, because you thought it was your belongings and you were the one who owned the story. And you see that you were caring for a process, and that the process would reveal itself in some kind of relationship. There were a doorway opened up. And in the loss of that relationship or the feeling, you see that doorway of perception also closed, that left you soul searching. Soul searching is an important aspect. I'm not giving it up to the neurotic world that it owns it. The deeper aspect of the journey has soul searching to it, because it's exactly a soul searching issue that is happening. Only that can see what is happening, not the self that is built to continue, so it comes up with formulas of survival. So between us, we have all, from what I've seen of each person, created a life or lived in a creation that had identity as part of it, not the owner of the story. And it has been an exploration. And as we meet accidentally and bump into each other, the stories share as if it's natural. So that perspective wasn't literal. I think that Alfred was saying, check it out. It may be happening for you, because you did say something about a month ago that you were feeling this way and that way. So it may be that he picks that up. Thank you also, Michael Bravo, for the assurance that life goes on and that she's a cool lady anyway.
He said his comment was support, not criticism. He said it's improper to diagnose thyroid from a video.
I know that because I feel that he is now a brother situation. So in sharing a situation, I do feel he's coming from a sweet place. I I feel that everyone who just shared that is coming from a sweet place. In
Oh,
this.
I do too. That's why I'm authentically asking if I look off and I'm not aware of it.
Yes, but since they visit our place and we haven't met them, I'm kind of introducing them to a process that we're sharing. Do you understand? In meeting each other, and how we've been somewhat working with time and space, how one can enter into the process. I was again just reading another report, how intelligent forgetting is. And the guy just made a brilliant, or how it allows you to navigate and survive. But it is also a survival instrument. But once it is consciously forgetting, then you see it's not actually forgetting, it's a conscious process creatively that you're utilizing. So once you discover something that you've been dealing with anyway, but you discover it adds another dimension to it, that there is an inherent properties of existence that once awakened relate to life from a very different place. But once the survival is so dominant, it's trying to organize life around this concept. And that means continuity and this and that is trying to assure ownership of the existence. But once the perception is deep enough and one explores it deep enough, the ownership is secondary to the literal world, but the exploration of it is no longer possessive in the same way. In other words, it's like a science that you're exploring something. Somehow you're surrendering some structure in order to explore something new. I feel that what we share is a trap for each person to see something beyond themselves. And that we've created a kind of conversation that's normalized. Because again, as I mentioned, many cancer doctors, friends that I know, get the same cancer that they treat. Many of us who are caring for those who are lonely and hurt have an element of aloneness and hurt in our own life happening simultaneously. That is not so literal, but an evocative part of the existence. And I say, what would that mean? The dumbness as if an angel wanted to live your life, that the angel came back. Did they say, well, you want to live their life? And they say, are you kidding? They don't have any money. They don't have, and they say, sure, let me try it. So to come into the life from that place where it is no longer historically driven to survive and continue, but in fact, the exploration of the existence through the body that you're in now is a journey perceptively for you that is no longer driven by the karma. The attempt of this meeting between each other is to interrupt the karmic hold on our life and let us see the dharma that runs through the story. And that is the dumb perception too, one little thing, that the people that we came from, our parents, that were just people, just like we were. And in releasing the story, you see an experience before you were literally born. And so when you have that experience of before you were literally born, the literal sense of you being born through the identity is no longer the defining force. You see, then the identity is, in fact, as I mentioned, the Uber driver of the story. But that there is an energy that is seeking experience. And it seeks experience through relationship, opens up doorways, or the absence of relationship opens up doorways also. But somehow there's a dialogue that happens. And on the surface, one may have loneliness, but in the depth, one is having aloneness. Loneliness is seeking to satisfy itself psychologically. The aloneness is looking for a genuineness. So if it has challenges in the world, it's because it has a relationship to something that's genuine in a world that's not genuine any longer. So that's why it comes in the form of a face in the crowd. It's not literally a face in the crowd. It's kind of hidden in plain sight. So I say that anyone knowing Kai deeply would flip over knowing her. What does flip mean anyway? Don't be flip. Okay. We won't be flip. So you want to try some things there, Kai? Let me see those eyebrows of yours again.
I had no idea my eyebrows were thinning. Are they thinning?
No, you could see. I mean, you look
No,
beautiful.
no, he's probably, he may be correct. He's not, but also I think that
Yeah.
they're both correct in their reading that
Yeah.
Well, I do have a lot of tension in the right side of my body, and I'm releasing a lot of like really deep old emotional stuff. I know that right now.
I would
particularly.
say that basically the thyroid conditions, what do you say, Alfred? Wouldn't you say that the thyroid conditions would be the underlying and hypo or hyper? But I would say that that was one of the diagnoses that you've had, Erja, before, a hypo, but also
Hypo.
a
Yes.
thyroid condition, and it's also based on the circadian rhythms. And so therefore, that becomes a struggle for you when there is the thyroid condition or Hashimoto's.
But
Maybe Hashimoto's.
change
Maybe.
of weather does that too.
So that may be so that,
Yeah.
so you want to check it out, but where would you check it out there?
Well, yeah, I need to find, I can go to my doctor who tested me last year. I got all my tests last April, I think, and my thyroid was just a teensy bit high, but she said absolutely nothing to be concerned
Okay.
about.
So I feel that that's probably so, but
But I could, it's probably time for another checkup.
but it may be, what happened, Alfred?
The things that they found last year were that my iron was low and that I
Yeah.
have this huge meningioma in my liver, which is apparently not a big deal, but it's pretty big. I don't know.
Look, I think that the body, it's an amazing process that we're talking about, and it's an amazing balancing act. The kind of lifestyles that we've adopted in the last year or two have been very unusual. That the body is managing this juggling act and managing a new shift and this and that is brilliant. It may need your recognition to care for it and a kind of style of living. But at the same time, there has been an interruptus in the story. I would say that is kind of looking at health from a very different place. And that to me is not the health of continuity, it's the kind of health of being alive deeply in the moment. That'll have its own extension or not.
Yes.
So I do feel that something that may be from their fields, that may be something that you can look into, but I wouldn't be too pressured around it. But you may be can use some perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's something a medical professional can help with, but from my experience in the past, medical professionals don't help a whole lot. It's more of an emotional thing that I need to.
You want an emotional thing? If you
No,
were
I don't want any more emotional things.
if you were to die today, God forbid, you would be the most beautiful corpse in Pennsylvania. So you're cool as you are. You can pass away and you've lived a life. Okay. So if you're living now, it's because you're into it and you're hanging around. But you have, from what I've seen of you and met of you, you've lived a life and you've brought some beautiful kids into the world. Okay, you're free to go. Okay. But if you
Don't
want,
tempt me. I might.
okay, so
Take you up on that
I
offer.
do feel it is like that, but it is kind of holy now. And holy means that you're free to go. You've done everything you had to do in the literal world. And you're free to pass, but now you have time, this space to play with. And so I feel that you can explore the kind of health you need to live in that place. But I think it is really very much that you're kind of creating yourself from a different place now, that the past is no longer, you're kind of finishing with that need as a literal need. And somehow your expression will be around invitation.
I really just want my life to be a love affair now.
Really. Your life is in the absence of love affair. It's been, in fact, a profound love affair in absence.
That's what I mean. A love affair with life, a love affair with God, a love affair.
I feel that is happening already, or you wouldn't have stayed in the situation that you're in. So you understand that the thing is deeper than just a story is happening. And I think you've cared for that. So from that perspective, Alfred's sense of something may be correct. Just double check and see where your levels are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about time to do that anyway.
And, but I
I
also,
don't know. What do you do though if you do have a thyroid issue? I don't want to take medicine.
if you do have a thyroid,
Yes.
well, I think we all do have a thyroid, and we all do have
Issue. I said issue.
well, it becomes probably all of us have some element of issue with it because we live in an artificial world. You live in artificial lights is a constant. You know, those people who were exposed to fluorescent lights had very great thyroid conditions and stuff like that that they found. So then you see the body is managing something. It is not that it is ill. Its illness is part of its attempt to manage something. You see. So I think that what we have then is, again, like I did use the illustration, the dumb illustration of having a cup of coffee when you want to energize to do something. You come into, but you understand what coffee is. So then your use of it, I'd like to make our use of these things as normal as that. There may be some things that you utilize or some medicines that you try that are coming from that place where it doesn't have the pressure of survival. It has the pressure of caring for the life creatively. So that there is a dying process happening in our life is not such an unusual thing when it's recognized. That the body is having a kind of dialogue and a struggle and a juggling act going on at all times. And as you recognize it, you bring a consciousness to it. So I feel that what they've just done is brought a consciousness to something that's happening for you, you know, where you're just aware of it. You may need to be more outdoors. You may need this. That'll come to you, but that somehow, and you'll look it up a little bit.
I think I need to make love.
Okay, so then
That's
you discovered,
my
you
medicine.
discovered a language that these guys are really talking about. In the absence of lovemaking, what happens to your thyroid?
That's it.
Now we're talking a different language. Now, Alfred, and now everyone else, now you're talking from a different place. So in the absence of a hey baby, a clear hey baby, your body must go through a lot of shit. Your being must go through shit because there is a constant. I'm not talking about the horniness of life owning it or something like that. I'm talking about a journey. And there is a journey with there's a conversation that's hidden in plain sight. The only thing is that the next conversation can't come from the knower or the bosser or the owner or the shticker. You understand, in relationship to the essential energy, we're naive, not stupid. But then reason or logic or ego is not the very premise of conversation in that. So there is a surrender when there's a conversation with the other side of the mirror. And it's not a surrender so much as logic. It is that something that is to be perceived can only be perceived from a place that the person has come to. It's not a possessive of the ego. It is, in fact, a creative process which makes it holy in its own way, or sacred in its own way. And it's not the shtick sacredness. It is perceptively seen. So I think that you okay, Con?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that may be so, that's what's happened, but not as a line. But as a friend, as a deep friendship going on, I think that they're cool dudes. Anyone else on?
Danny,
Yeah.
You just muted yourself, Alfred.
okay.
No,
So-
Spiro's laughing. Why, Spiro's laughing at all this, Alfred.
You muted yourself again.
um, um, get a TPO, thyroid peroxidase test.
Yes.
If it's not Hashimoto's, iodine will help a lot. And so, we got iodine sprays. Iodine will help. If it's TSH, if your TSH is going north, get more iodine. And I've diagnosed 10 people with hypothyroid. It's endemic in America and India.
Yeah.
And it's not, it'll kill you slowly. Get your cholesterol tested, because your cholesterol goes up, you have a heart attack, and you die.
No, my cholesterol has been low my
But
entire
one
life.
thing is, but I
They've
think,
always tried to raise my cholesterol.
but when you say India and you say this, the very, to some extent, the meditative process that you're looking for resembles hypothyroid. So my feeling is that those who are on a journey exploring, they're exploring a state. That state will also represent a non-agitated or a not hyperthyroid. So
Hypothyroid.
well, no, I understand, because we've only met about 300 folks in our career here with that very situation. And then hyper dudes. Well, you know the hyper dudes, don't you?
But Kai, do you sleep well at night?
Well, that's a loaded question.
No, so insomnia, irritability are all.
No, I don't have insomnia. I wake up when the energy wakes me up, and it's doing clearing stuff, but that's very specific energy.
Well,
Hold it there.
Okay.
Alfred, take it easy. And I say, why? What is happening? And I say, are you saying to me that it's a condition that needs to be cured? I find it to be that thyroid condition to be very essential for certain explorations that I'm interested in.
I suffer from it.
And now I'm tempting to look at the being and the body and the exploration from a little bit of a different perspective. Since you weren't here and we were discussing sleep, and we just discovered that the idea of an 8-hour sleep is a manufactured thing that people have been hypnotized into, and that once you're released from that story, you see that creative sleeping is very different. It's for you to create. So all of a sudden, when you wake up in the middle of the night, it's not insomnia any longer. You see that you have been forced into an 8-hour pattern when your body isn't doing that. It may sleep for 4 hours. You may interrupt it. You may go. Segmented sleep is in fact the norm for those people who don't have an 8-hour day and a work-like day. So then you start to discover, and I discover that all of a sudden waking up in the night is a beautiful thing. There's something, and even lying there in the night introduces you to lucid dreaming and other states. So I'm saying what was a condition before, in fact, releases the story from the literal.
We agree there totally.
When in fact your so-called sleep is interrupted, it's not interrupted. It's your conditioning that's interrupted. You've been
We agree,
conditioned
Danny.
into a literal sleeping pattern. When fake creative people create their own expression, they create their diet for themselves to fit their life that they're living. And those of us who have created, we've created our expression in a day. None of us have a working literal day that way. So each of us have created.
Back to
Kai.
Danny.
Yeah.
A word in.
Yes. Sure.
If Kai's low in iron, that's a big thing. You need to have vitamin C and iron together to absorb it.
Take it every day.
Low iron.
I take them every day.
What do you take?
Vitamin C and iron together.
Yeah, but you need to have spinach, molasses, the sources of natural iron, not just.
Yeah.
So
I do all that.
No, Alfred, I think I'm gonna come up there with Spiro and grab your cooler and bring you back down here in chains. We'll tie you up.
Mucho culo.
My man, you're gonna run away with my show. It's okay. Let me go though, okay?
All right.
Maybe I'll come visit you sometime. You can diagnose me.
Yeah. How you doing, Alfred? It's okay, but you've heard, let me see, what words can we use? That's that I mean, yeah, no. You okay, Alfred? Thanks a lot for that. That's very nice information. What do you think, Guy?
I think he's very accurate.
think-
But I do take all those. I'm taking iron and molasses and
I think they're giving
raisins.
me
and-
that every day also. I think they're giving me vitamin D thing there and maybe vitamin C. And, but I also do have some sense, Sting, that that it's come back. I'll probably get an examination in a few months, but I've been kind of working with just doing nothing and caring for it. But it is waving its hand at me. It does seem to me so let's say the cancer is not an enemy. It does seem like an enemy at times when it tries to take over the joint, but it does seem to me that it causes a kind of reflection. And then also the reflection is how to keep your human together in treatment. And until you're in the treatment in the same way, then the advice is a missing perspective. Because we're talking about advice from having been in it and having had the experience. And then somehow the life has come back where one then sees the story from a different perspective. So we are sharing a situation, and I think that is, the diagnosis is relatively, not the full diagnosis, but the sense of something is there. But basically, I can show you a book here, Facial Diagnosis.
Mhm.
Can I see some faces out there and I'll give you a diagnosis of what's to happen. But basically, I've refrained from diagnosis for self-discovery. And I say why? Because when the diagnosis literalizes, it doesn't see that it's part of a creative act. It's not, at this point in time, the things that we thought were false may in fact be, once they're released, as I mentioned, sleep, awakening, sleep, and then finding out that in fact the 8-hour sleep is an invention that may not apply to you. You may have to create your own from the life that you're living and who you are. And then you see that in that you somehow have stepped out of the organized sleep programming out there of the pills that they have and the treatment and even the punishment if you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep and how bad you feel about it and how you're carrying it the next day. And all of a sudden in waking up, you discover a whole other dimension of the experience when you're not forced to do this or to do that. And you find another dimension of health that has been happening all along, that you've always attempted to have a natural kind of health that is not literal. So then you discover a kind of self-creation where you meet your own life. And not from theory, but actually meet your own life. So then you see a shared experience is a shared experience. And it's your own voice talking to you. Then it could be that you read something that Alfred just mentioned or whatever, and you start to see it comes to you in ways.
Yeah.
And so that's what the attempt was here, to create a natural format where it's not treatment per se, but it allows a perception to happen for each person.
Mhm.
Is that okay, Alfred? That the treatment doesn't literalize as much as it is informative creatively. We lost Alfred again then.
He's there we go.
Danny,
Yeah,
let's do face to face. I'll come down there, you come up here, and I just want to be a bodhisattva.
you don't want to be a bodhisattva?
No, I am. I don't. Yeah, I don't want to, but I am.
But he eats socialists.
You are no longer a bodhisattva. You are now a little shaman guy from New Jersey who is
No, Florida. Florida.
a little no, you New Jersey. You don't want to get out of New Jersey.
Although you're thinking
So look,
Florida.
I didn't want to just say, look, this is a crazy little guy from New Jersey who's been giving people shit all these years. Kai, don't worry about it. And I said, no, this is a brilliant little dude. This is a brilliant man. So he's many things and many factors. But once we trapped him into incorporating him into a kind of discussion between us, then he's a friend who's sharing something. So we do have to grab him by the nose because you see he's attempting to run away with it. He's saying, hey, baby, your eyebrows are too thin. I'd like to connect with you. Maybe we'll have some conversations in the future.
Aren't you married,
My man
Alfred?
is making his move. And I say, no, he's got enough troubles going on for
You
himself.
look fine.
Teddy. And Kai can say, you see this sweet thing? You ain't going to jive me with no thyroid shit. You got to be heavier than that, bro. This is Kai Shanti, mother jumper. You ain't going to give me a thyroid thing and slip into the field.
No, Danny.
So you are now part of our situation. Thank you very much for your activity, man.
All right. Well,
But
Fantuzzi to you too.
Fantuzzi, how is he?
He died from thyroid.
No, you're not. You haven't been in touch with him, have you?
Fantuzzi died?
No,
No.
not. Yeah. But he slept with my wife.
He put that out last year. That had me kind of having to find out a little bit, but no one had any sense that he had passed away. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I love you, Danny. Let's hang out.
Okay, we'll do that. Thanks for the information.
Thank you. I appreciate your information.
It's just like, I've diagnosed 10 people with hypothyroid. And
Oh, I'll check it out. I'll find out.
and
Okay.
No, but I mean, can't we see that Ursula, in fact, has struggled with that for 100 years already? The hypothyroid, but not struggled with it, found out all about it, everything that's introduced, but also the kind of state that one sometimes feels in the hypothyroid was what people were attempting to get through meditation.
yeah, but is it Hashimoto's or not? That's the big question.
I understand if it's Hashimoto's, but I also take that RSO oil under the tongue in order to have a very thing that would be hypothyroid if it wasn't diagnosed that way, which the body is completely relaxed, but there's no high in it. But I feel that the body is relaxed. That was my premise against inflammation in the body.
So
That's
my message to Kai, TPO, thyroid peroxide oxidase. If it's not Hashimoto's, it's a whole different animal. It's very treatable. Iodine, seaweed, etc.
Yeah, I eat seaweed every other day in my smoothie.
Okay, well then live long and prosper.
Thanks.
I thought that, can I then be relieved of the job? I thought that I was kind of hanging around to awaken something with you, Alfred, but is that a dumb idea?
I like dumb ideas.
Well, I mean, but would you like that dumb idea, or could I be free from that story? Because if you're going to do bodhisattva, you can't do bodhisattva to me, can you? With a straight face.
Yeah, I can. I've been bodhisattva for 10 years.
Okay, we'll catch you later then, bro. Because I then tell you, if you're going to do bodhisattva, then you also have to be a guy from New Jersey who's.
Yes.
From what I also saw for a long period, a very lonely guy from New Jersey.
No, I'm learning Sanskrit.
So then I kind of understood that if you treated 10 people with Hashimoto's, it's because you were a horny guy for them.
No.
There's something attractive about someone with Hashimoto's. They look very sweet and white and this and that. So then I say one of the underlying factors for you is that you've been seeking a love of your life as a very strong factor. It's in your nose gets red, your ass gets red. So basically, I would say the chief factor for you is that Kai is sweet looking. And so I say to a sweet looking person, you know, you got Hashimoto's and your ass and your nose is coming here and you're looking, and I say, I'll kick your ass, man. You're going to jump into my scene like that? Okay. Thanks for the information, but it's looking out for you that we're talking about. So
All
if you
right.
come into the situation, it's because there's some things that you also, that we're sharing intimately. Thanks for the advice, but not as a bodhisattva mother jumper, but as Alfred, a
No,
friend.
Danny.
Alfred, a friend.
Danny,
Let me grab your nose. Put your nose against the screen.
a duck land on top of the.
Alfred, a
on top
friend
of the
who
roof.
does bodhisattva, not someone who is
Danny,
dominated by both sides.
the duck on the top of the roof. The guy shot it and it fell down.
You're telling me you ain't going to do it then?
No, the duck on the top of the roof.
I'm asking you something.
Okay.
Bodhisattva is relative. When you're with me, you're Alfred who can do bodhisattva when needed, but not is bodhisattva.
Okay.
Because bodhisattva got rules and they're shit talking about what people should do. And I'm saying, I think I'm looking out for you.
Tell everybody about the duck on the roof.
Nah. You can keep the duck. What do you think?
Is that the punchline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that he revealed an Alfred of this strong dude. Okay. Should I visit that world again? But I'm such a geezer, man. I'm on the way out.
No, you're not, Danny. Stop thinking that. Just stop it.
Stop thinking.
Don't be a pussy. You're going to live for another 10 years. I don't care what you say.
10 years is like that.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, like that. Okay.
What do you say? Should we let him into the story, Kai? Or you like him? You're attracted to the little shit of it?
No, I don't know. I mean, I like him. Yeah, I like him. Yeah, he's nice.
But you do have to grab him in a headlock and say, look, yo, bro.
I'm not nice. I'm the bad shaman.
Who cares if you're nice or not? The only thing is if you're a conspirator.
Okay.
In other words, if your life is more important than everyone else's life, so the survival of it.
I am nothing. I know nothing.
So the question I try to have is that it's friendship that you're sharing, not a trip. So bodhisattva, can you get rid of him? We don't do bodhisattva. We do a friend who is offering some perspective.
Thank you.
And if you're bodhisattva, leave me out of the trip. Let me retire from this shit. So you may need to do bodhisattva out there, but don't with a straight face with me. We're hanging out because there's a friendly, but there's a spiritual thread that does run through it normally. So you want the job, bodhisattva? You know what that means?
Yeah, I do.
In Italian, bodhisattva means bafangul.
Oh,
I didn't know that. I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what bafangul means, but
I'll show you.
okay. It usually means someone who leads with the ass.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone who backs into the someone who
yours.
backs into the door, doesn't enter in the door from the front, but comes in backwards through the door. So I think it was a bafangul it was called, and then in other areas it's bodhisattva. It takes a form of someone who leads with the ass into the story. You want the job?
I want the job.
Well, I think I've had the job for a long time also. So thanks for relieving me of this job. I think that I can now retire. What a weird 50 some odd years it's been, let me tell you.
All right, well,
Then you throw Fantuzzi into the lot. For 50, I'll show you Fantuzzi. I'll show you Fantuzzi playing Santa Claus in Goa 50 years ago in front of Eight Finger Eddie's stoop there. And he was giving food out to the kids dressed as Santa Claus with a big belly and everything. So what a flight. What a crazy life it's been. Should I be, so you say, hang out with it anyway. Well, I don't mind being relieved of it. What do you think? I think I am
love
being.
it or leave it. Love it or leave it.
Or let it be lonely.
Hey, baby. Lonely. That's stupid. I got dogs.
What do you think of his debut there, Spiro? What do you think of Alfred's debut?
I like him.
You like him still, yeah. Okay, he still likes you, and you like him still, Sting?
Yeah, I love Spiro.
He loves you. Be careful, though. He may be making a move on you. You know, he's got a lot of shit going on up there now, you know, so he may be making a move. They may need it. But you need him to be kind of Indian, don't you? Aren't you needing Spiro to kind of have an Indian vibe?
I got Chai, and he's coming up on Friday.
Yeah.
Spiro's coming up on Friday. We're having Chai.
But you're wanting an Indian version of it. Not that he
Did he
comes
shave
from,
his beard?
you don't want
Did
an
he shave his
Ohio, you don't want an Ohio Spiro, do you?
No, did Spiro shave his beard?
No.
Okay, good for him. I'm glad.
He tripped.
In our tradition, Indians, we call him dog face.
Kai, is anyone else still on or
No, who's on?
he's gone?
I don't know. We have 4 people on YouTube. I don't know who it is.
I hope it's not too far-fetched, that it still retains some kind of goofy spirituality to it, would you say? Well, it is a question that usually folks won't have. They take it for granted or this or that. But again, you see enough of these conditions in a world of people who are trying to live naturally or spiritually or whatever, that it does seem to come with the turf, because they then they stop taking certain foods that are normal out there. And their lives, once you start to reshape your life, and then you start to meet people who also are reshaping their life. And so the perspective on it is a bit different. It's not so much as living longer in terms of time as much as it is living deeper. But when you're living deeper, you've interrupted the sense of time. So out of the depth of the life may come a length of time. But it's no longer coming out of the neurosis or the pressure or the fears or anything like that. There is a process that somehow the energy is released when the karma doesn't own it, when it's okay. So that you start to see a creative process happening in the body and in the being. And as you see it, you're caring for it. So then a perspective of Alfred's is important in the creative world, in what we're doing. But not as a condition, it literalizes, but as something that second nature, you perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow you introduce it into your life, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying the awakening of the sense of the second nature to you now, where you're navigating through the world. And then Alfred, who's have thrown themselves into exploring certain avenues. The only thing is that since I've kind of tried a lot, I meet guys who tend to own the story from their perspective of psychedelics and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, that they tend to, holy shit. It just threw me into a moment when I remember I went into this place maybe 60 years ago, a methadone clinic. And then a social worker asked me, can I help this fellow who seems to be, and I ran into him and he just got out, and a tall black fellow, young fellow, and he was high on acid, really stoned. And he was captured, and we walked down the stairs counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and they say, look, you're stoned. You had to, even though he was a drug addict, the acid opened up a whole different trip for him. And
Right.
so I remember then working with people with my own exploration with acid. I think I told you my daughter came out of an acid trip of 3 days in Brooklyn. That that was the first time that anyone heard of it and was introduced to the neighborhood. But the basic thing that you took it was to get stoned, we thought.
Mm.
We found out by accident that it was more exploratory than stone.
Yes.
So somehow I feel a whole marriage and a baby and a whole life came out of that one trip, that one there. and how it was given to us, and it was more a street life, not experimental. And then as it became experimental in the activity of everyone, then actually that's what India to us was. India was not India. India was an acid trip that hippies brought to the place.
Yeah.
But we flooded India, and somehow for a period of time in ashrams and this and that, we normalized it. I think after a period of time, it became very violent towards these people, the culture. They started to, but at a certain point, we laid our acid trip on India. So it
Yeah.
was our India, it was our Krishna, it was our this, it was our that, it was our namaste.
Yeah.
You understand? And we created that scene. Now that it's becoming right wing with Modi, and and they're claiming it. But what was at one point was the visit had a hipness to it. That kind of changed the picture a little bit. And so I think that there's a literal India and there was the evocative India of our experience. If you took away what I had an experience in the Himalayas of despair, waking up and feeling it was all full of shit. And that left me walking around India. But I discovered in retrospect that state was important to the experience of despair. Because you threw away all thought. I woke up one morning seeing the delusion of something, even though it's okay. But then I saw what we call delusion was in fact a necessary experience of you experience something so low and deep in yourself that was an aspect of the authenticity of the journey, that you would no longer be satisfied with bullshit. You wouldn't be satisfied with makeup products any longer and school cover little sayings and this and that. You see that you had a journey in relationship to the mystery. And that perception allowed you to see a very vital part of your life.
Yeah.
And then you see the survival and all the other dimensions that come were no longer dominant. They were creative aspects of that journey. So I feel that what Alfred was saying is, he has perceptions of creative aspects of the journey where you can see that something's interfering in that. But we do have to grab him by the nose a little bit and lighten him up.
No, I'm sure that my thyroid's been off over the years. I mean, I don't really get it checked that often. So I'm sure he's probably accurate in that.
No, he wouldn't say that to Derek. Look, if he said, look to Derek, can't you see that your nose and your eyes are up
Yeah,
and
Derek looks fine. Derek's fine.
so yeah, okay. So he
Look
only
at your eyebrows, Derek.
he only says that to the ladies. Yeah. That diagnosis, okay.
Danny,
Pardon
no, I got many Jews I told that to.
Oh, Jews.
Yeah, Jews.
You better be careful of those guys. They have conspiracies going, I think.
Oh, they're Auschwitz survivors.
Holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit. And Derek looks fine. I'm not but just get well. That's all I care about.
I think I am well. I don't feel unwell, so I think I'm well. Okay. But I will get my thyroid checked out.
What do you say? What do you say, Ursha? What do you think?
I mean, it's I trust Kai to do what is good
but
for
say
her.
Something to the cherries. You have something to say to the cherries? Say something.
It's funny
Since you happen to have the condition that he's talking about and he didn't even look at you. So my feeling is, here's Ursha who has the very thing that he's diagnosing, and he's
look at my eyebrow.
But I mean, your eyebrows, Ursha.
No, but Ursha, you can do it like this. So somehow the very conditions that he's talking about are there. Look at the nose, the eyes, but it's also beautiful. So
Ursha's gorgeous.
Nice to meet you. Okay. You still want to do Bodhisattva with me? What do you think? What happened? Alfred is gone then again?
I'm not unmute. I'm talking to Danny.
You're not what? No, I don't doubt your perspective. I'm also opening you up that we've been here sharing something that you haven't shared. And so in that, I understand the perspective, but once the perspective comes in, there is also a creative process that you're involved in. You understand? So I'm sharing that. I feel that in retrospect will be looked at. But what do you say, Alfred? Am I a ball buster to you by denying your expertise? I feel I'm introducing your expertise, integrating it into our situation. So Bodhisattva, I don't know who you're doing, with a straight face, you're doing Bodhisattva. I guess there may be a world where that's cool, but you want to do Bodhisattva with us?
Unmute. Okay. You come from
No,
Brooklyn.
I came from
Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Brooklyn. And I came from my mother's womb.
No. Who told you that?
It was in a rowboat.
Oh, you didn't know? Oh, we got the
No,
information on you. I thought that you knew. When they found the baby in the hospital, nobody knew who the hell it came from and nobody wanted it. You were left on your own. Then some strange critters adopted it. You must have had a strange beginning.
Yeah, and a whole strange life, and life is strange.
Where you were loved and hated simultaneously.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's where you were happy to have you, and then you were a ball buster to have you. So, nice experience. Most of us have that experience in some way or another.
Hey, Danny, get your ass up here, and I'll see you soon. No.
What do you say, Spiro? I think that I'll be catching.
I got kimchi. I got lots of kimchi.
I'll see you in some lucid dreaming. Hmm?
Oh, I don't like the fish sauce.
Although he's going up to see the show there, but what do you think? They're a strange dude, Kai?
No, Spiro's
Imagine him
trimmed
together.
his beard. Spiro trimmed his beard.
Imagine them together.
I had it trimmed.
They shamed you into trimming your beard. That's
Well,
like,
it was sort of on my list. I just never got around to it.
That's a little harsh.
Hey, Sting,
But
snap out of it, will you? We thought we were helping you find some space, your lady and your friends in your life. And so we had a deep feeling and affection for you that you were about to look for the love and be with the love of your life.
I just sold my catalog
So
for $300.
and we also saw how difficult it would be when you ran into the straight life, when you were trying to have a creative or a creative life share. Basically, I felt I lent my sense for you in this because you were coming close to finding a love in the love of your life.
I love my life.
No, the love of your life is, hey, baby.
hey, baby.
And in fact, the very love of your life may have some thyroid condition that you may help them in. So, but what I'm saying is, as far as I'm concerned, your journey has not only been around what you've been doing, but there has been a quest or a journey. And there's a journey that a mystery takes form, that there's not a partner in regular terms. Usually we meet something that repeats the story. But usually at this time, I think it's demanding a kind of genuineness from everyone.
You want the truth, Danny?
Yeah.
My mom was adopted.
Your mom was adopted.
A narcissist. So I attracted narcissists all my life because I'm an empath.
You're too short to be a narcissist.
No, empath.
Yeah, but before that.
I'm too short to be a narcissist. I'm 6'8".
I understand. You may do Facebook.
I don't do
Born
Facebook.
in 68.
Look, I spent a lot of time. I was hoping that I would invite you to a realization of sorts, but that's unlikely. So
Danny, now that Spiro's next to you, Tell him about the time he was in my kitchen and ran around the neighborhood naked.
Me? That was fun.
Oh, here's a piece I got yesterday. Let me show you a piece that I got yesterday.
Remember, Sparrow?
Yeah, there's a few times.
And it may be for you.
All we gotta say is this time with feeling.
It may be for you, Alfred.
Oh, I love it. That's my lover.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, I love it.
Yeah.
It's terrific.
I know it's terrific.
It's Tibetan, old Tibetan. I
Yeah.
traded for it yesterday.
And I've got art you like too.
And then I traded for a ball.
This is getting personal. I know.
They say that this is a very important bowl from the Great Lakes area. You see, that's the carving in it. Hmm?
Ah,
So when you come down here, Alfred, you may see it.
Okay.
Why, you think it'll be hard to come down? My feeling about going up, I considered it, but then he would stay overnight. It would be too much of a trip for me, actually.
No, I got an extra bedroom, but I'll come down and see you Sunday.
Yeah, this Sunday?
Yeah, why not?
Sure, what do you think?
I have to work on Sunday.
You're working Sunday?
Can we go,
I'll have to work.
can we go Tuesday?
He's coming
Going.
down.
No, he's coming
Oh,
down.
yes, please.
Okay.
I don't know. Mary looks a little bit hypothyroid also. Put your face up against the thing. What's that face in the back there? Yeah, look at her. Look at her there, Kai. What do you think? I don't know. Look at her nose and everything. It's,
Who am I looking at? Mary?
Mary.
Mary looks fabulous.
No,
Yeah.
Mary's got a little red nose though. Doesn't she?
You know, I'm also right smack dab in the middle of menopause, I think. So,
Yeah, no.
who knows what's going on with my body.
It's so nice speaking to everybody. What a goofy day it's been. Thank you, Alfred, for giving us goofiness for the day. And say goodbye to your friend here. I'll see you soon. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow, Derek. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Danny.
you, everybody.
Hope it hasn't been too weird for everyone.
I'm gonna come and get you, Urja.
maybe, I was thinking maybe for your birthday with Stephen, would it be okay to come with Stephen?
This marriage of yours with Stephen now is a bit of a question.
No, I feel
Yeah, that would be okay.
Hmm? You mean, well, that's why I say, can Stephen not come on and or give me a call and speak to him? Because I know Stephen since he's a boy, 100 years
But if
ago.
he would drive.
yeah.
But you both want to drive down together?
Well, I mean, I can come by
What,
You
for
know,
my birthday? No, I think that Rafi was probably drive down on my birthday.
oh, so maybe I could, yeah. But it was not so much that I don't know. It was just an idea.
No,
That
no. But
came-
did you? I'm saying it's a good. Okay, if that's what
I
you
haven't told me. I mean, I haven't talked to him about it.
look. It's not. It is someone that we know from 50 years ago that became very close in our life, and then I haven't seen them for 40 years, and then we are meeting them again in a different way. So it's so as you entered into it, even though it was simple with your daughter there and this and that, you understand that I've gone up there, the retreats that I've had up there, they're intense. And each character there was intense.
Yeah.
And you see the hurts and the angers and the stories and and so I've been there. We have been on a journey with each person. So that's why I'm saying, even when we were kidding, when Alfred jumped into the story, but hasn't shared very much time between us and hasn't really met anyone in that friendly, intimate way. I'm goofing with him enough so that it can be a friendly and not
Yes.
a diagnosis, but a friendly sharing. So you see that we're goofing, kidding, telling jokes, doing all those things, but attempting to create an atmosphere of a shared space of friends who are sharing. But all the friends have had a very strange, almost creative life. So when we're talking intimately, we're talking about that kind of expression. So I feel that when you entered back into Stephen,
Yes.
and your daughter, and this and that, it was not only a literal circumstance, but it was a creative circumstance that you were bringing, and your presence had meaning. Your presence said no trip, because you could not bear another season of the
No.
people close to you in another trip while you're going through something deep yourself. So when you are going through the very process that Alfred was describing there, where you're going through the living and dying process and the so-called illnesses that come along with the observation and the reflection. And ironically, you had all the so-called conditions that he was supposedly talking about. It got diagnosed and set out and treated, and the circumstance, and you're in the middle of everything that he's suggesting. And here you are, not only having it described to you, but experiencing it. Then I say you had information in plain sight that would have illuminated the circumstance. And you could have said, hey, you see how she's above me, I'm below her. I have the same condition she had 50 years later. Okay. And this is where we are. Sometimes it comes with a spiritual life, that condition. It's not only a condition itself, but sometimes there are whole practices that come out of it where it becomes a condition, but then you also see that it's also a condition in its essential place that people were trying to reach meditatively.
Mm.
The very so-called hypothyroid is also a question that they were trying to reach meditatively through mantras and stillness of the body and this and that.
Oh,
So
wow.
what may be hypo and hyper within a social construct
Yeah.
may be processes in the body. Okay, so when one runs away with the story, you may need to bring it back into balance or whatever. But if in fact you see that a life was lived around the hypothyroid, and a lifestyle was created around them, and then as I started to look up hypothyroidism and who had it, and then as I started to look up so-called sleep conditions or interrupted sleep conditions, I found the most brilliant people historically were noted to have this waking up in the middle of the night and then returning to sleep or creative sleep or whatever, but okay. And so they showed, there was, I think, about 27 important people in the world, important main discoveries or seeing scientific breakthroughs or enacting or whatever, but they all had a similar phenomena that resembled hypothyroidism and the kind of sleep that comes with hypothyroidism, which is usually an interrupted sleep.
Danny?
Yeah.
I found a great series to watch when you wake up of the night. I put, it's about the universe. And it was amazing. It's like diving into where we are going to go. It was very exciting. And Saturn has a pattern of a perfect hexagonal in which you could put 4 planet Earth. It gives you.
What was the name of it?
It's called the universe.
Universe. Okay, maybe.
And it's a series, so it's nice. You can watch one episode and then another one.
Bureau and I watched a strange movie yesterday that was reviewed in the director was reviewed in the New York Times, and the guy was so cool.
Oh, yes.
That he doesn't seek any publicity, but he had a very nice philosophy. But the movie was called what? Finding, huh? After Yang.
Oh, I just read an article. I made me want
that
to
was
see
the article.
that
It
movie.
was that guy who wrote it. He was a very interesting guy, but in seeing it, I still have to see it again, but don't we?
Oh, you saw the movie?
Well, it was the story was supposedly that there was an AI, or an artificial intelligence person created so deeply human that the little girl that was being cared for by the when something happened and he passed away or something, they missed him so deeply, even more than a regular person or member of the
Yes.
family. So it was very interesting. And then reading the philosophy of the director there. But then the film was pretty interesting, how the AI came to represent a deep love for them.
There's a nice little segment about.
Danny, I need to go make dinner. I love all of
We
you.
also do.
Yes.
We hang around. Thanks a lot. Are you okay?
Okay.
Carl? You okay?
Yeah.
with everything? Okay. I'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, take care.